Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for coming and thank you for waiting. It's been more than 10 hours since we started this day with two events, ministerial meeting with Canada and FAC. High Representative was chairing both, and he will now share some of the results or summaries of the discussions, and then we will take a few questions. So first of all, High Representative, you have the floor.
Thank you, Peter. As you have said, this has been a long day. It has been one of the longest Foreign Affairs Council. Well, it was Foreign Affairs Council, but first the Joint Ministerial Committee with Canada. Both, we started at 8 o'clock and it's 7 o'clock, so it's quite a long day. But it was wide. It was very interesting discussion, very important, successful. We start with a few words about the Joint Ministerial Committee that we held with Canada in the morning, and then I chaired this Ministerial Committee together with Minister Joly. As you know, Canada is one of the closest and most reliable partners of the European Union. We have a strategic partnership agreement, a very comprehensive and advanced cooperation framework. We review our relationships. All of them goes well, but we want to work even more closely together on where, on food security, on energy, on civil protection, on tackling disinformation, and obviously on the key foreign policy issues, starting with the war in Ukraine, where our unity is a stronger asset. Certainly we discuss about the ratification process of the CETA and everything, but important is the will to continue working together on the new challenges that we will be facing as a consequences of the war. And this is going to be, for many countries around the world, a difficult situation because the energy prices and the food crisis will increase, and they are going to be assaulted by the Russian disinformation about the causes of these price increases. Then we started the Foreign Affairs Council itself, and we started with our political engagement with the Western Balkans. This is a commitment that we made at the last European Union Western Balkan Summit, and is more important than ever in the current circumstances because the Russia propaganda and disinformation is very much widespread in the Western Balkans. And that's why we invited for the first time the 6 foreign affairs ministers of the 6 Western Balkan countries to join us today for a discussion that took place during the lunch, where we discuss the future of the Western Balkan countries on their path to the European Union. We welcome and appreciated the strategic and courageous choices of those partners who align fully with our foreign policy and sanctions. Not all of them, but many of them. And the ministers expressed their clear expectation towards the partners as future member states to commit with European values and to the European foreign policy. Those who have not yet done so, and Serbia is one of them, should, as soon as they can, step up their alignment and implement sanctions. We understand the difficulties and we value a lot the fact that all voted against Russia in the United Nations General Assembly. But we expect from the candidates, from our partners, to align fully with our foreign policy. For me, it's clear, as High Representative, for many of my colleagues in the Foreign Affairs Council, that to maintain close ties with the Putin regime is no longer compatible with building a common future with the European Union. Both things at the same time are not compatible. Being neutral today with respect to the Ukrainian war is a false concept. One country has invaded another, and putting them in the same footing fails to differentiate between the attacker and the attack. And this is not possible. You cannot look to the other side. I said that in the European Parliament at the beginning of the war, and I repeated it today. Certainly we can understand that there are constraints, there are difficulties, there are links, there are public opinions, whatever you want. But it's clear that there are things that are incompatible. Albania, Montenegro and North Macedonia fully align with our foreign and security policy decisions, and because of that they may be exposed to more threats from Russia. Standing up with us in defense of international law may have a cost. And in fact, Albania and North Macedonia are being considered as unfriendly countries by Russia. Also, Bosnia-Herzegovina has aligned to our measures against Russia, and so did Kosovo, despite not having to do so, because Kosovo is not even recognized by several member states. It's important to make these differences. All our partners consider and they feel the direct impact of Russia's war that's causing around the world. I said before, on energy prices, on food shortages and inflation. Unhappily, all these things together will bring the world to the edge of another recession, depending on the decision that the central banks will adopt. But in whatever they do, we will have to adapt our financial support in line with these new needs, and on these actions we will include our partners in order to mitigate the effects of this coming crisis. We sent to the Western Balkan partners a strong message asking them to act more strategically when it comes to domestic problems, when it comes to reforms, and when it comes to solving open bilateral issues. There is a need for reconciliation in the Western Balkans. And there was a clear understanding that we need to launch a negotiation with North Macedonia and Albania immediately. I want to stress that, and I want to make clear my personal commitment as High Representative for Foreign Policy that we need to start the negotiations with North Macedonia and Albania. And I hope, more than wish, that this will happen during the French presidency, which is, by the way, ending its end. We all see that this delay is unsustainable. We cannot call Albania and North Macedonia that fulfill all conditions to remain seated and link each other if we don't offer them a clear perspective. This situation is not only harming them, it's harming us. It's costing us and the region too much in terms of credibility and political perspective. It's a present to Russia. It's a present to Russia and an occasion to further drag this on. There were also many calls for visa liberalization with Kosovo. The Commission, and remember I am also Vice President of the Commission, has presented several times to the Council a proposal, an opinion, arguing that Kosovo fulfills all criteria for visa liberalization. There is visa liberalization for Ukraine for a long time ago. We continue supporting visa liberalization with Kosovo. We discussed about the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the Council reiterated the commitment for a single single, united and sovereign country. Rolling back reforms and dismantling state institutions are incompatible with European perspective, are unacceptable. We need the political leaders in the country to resume dialogue, fully return to state institutions, continue working on reforms and perform elections as a schedule. We certainly talk about the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue, and ministers express the full respect and implement all previous agreements, which is not the case, and continue the European Union-led dialogue. We need constructive engagement and rapid progress on normalization of relations between Kosovo and Serbia. Each one agrees on that, on their side. But when they sit together, it's difficult to advance. We need to create trust. It is essential to improve the atmosphere in the dialogue, engage in positive actions to create trust, avoid unilateral steps, and I hope that before the summer we will be able to hold another meeting at the highest political level with the Prime Minister of Kosovo and the President of Serbia. But work is still in progress. Then we went with the EU ministers to the issue of Ukraine. And we were joined by the Ukrainian Foreign Minister, Dmytro Kuleba, who debriefed us of the state of the play. We reassured him on the continued support in fighting the Russian aggression. In this part of the meeting, the Canadian Foreign Minister, Mélanie Joly, also joined our deliberations. And we went through an analysis of every way to provide financial support in front of the worsening humanitarian situation, in front of the financial needs during the war, for the post-reconstruction of the country, and mainly to defend themselves. And we agreed to provide an additional 500 million from European Peace Facility for weapons deliveries. What started with 500 million, now it reaches 2,000 million. And this is just the point of the iceberg. Because apart from these 2,000 million, the member states do a lot from their side without asking for refunding. This is the money to refund expenditures from the member states, but many member states do much more than that. I cannot give you a precise figure, but believe me, it's much more than the 2,000 million coming from the European budget. Well, not exactly the European budget. As I explained to you, the European Peace Facility is an intergovernmental instrument, not part of the European budget in strict terms, but are the member states of the European Union who fund and manage this fund. We also considered to support Ukraine's economy through trade liberalization, transport facilitation measures. There is an EU action plan for Ukraine solidarity lanes. We have to help Ukraine to keep producing and exporting grains and wheat. The storage capacity of Ukraine is filled because they cannot export this grain. And they need to empty this storage capacity in order to be able to receive the next crop. So we are working on how to help them to take this grain out by train, by these solidarity lanes. There are other ideas on the table about the possibility of deblocking Odessa, but by the time being, nothing concrete has come out from the Ukrainian and Russia, each one from their side. Remember that these waters are completely mined, so it's not just a matter of opening the port, because the ships cannot go unless a strong work on demining on this water can be performed. We will continue imposing sanctions on Russia to make the cost of invasion unbearable to the Kremlin. We continue discussing unhappily today it has not been possible to reach an agreement to finalize the 6th sanction package. The issue will go back to the COREPER and ambassadors will continue discussing. We are with the same difficulties about unanimity on the oil ban. Then there is the narrative battle. Russia is trying to shift the blame for the growing worldwide impact, not only towards its victims, Ukraine, but also to the European Union and to the West. They claim that the crisis is consequences of the sanction, when the crisis, the price increases, is consequences of the war. When Russia is bombing Ukrainian fields, destroying, burning, and looting food storages, when Russian warships are blocking the Black Sea trade routes and the Ukrainian ports, when Russia prevents Ukrainian wheat from being exported, it has certainly a negative impact in the daily lives of people in Africa or Asia. And I want to answer to all leaders of the world, some of them from Latin America and others from Africa, who has been considering, well, these sanctions affects us also, to tell them that there are not the sanctions, there is no sanction that can affect them because we have never forbidden exports to third countries. It's the war that Russia has launched against Ukraine who is affecting them and their people. But we have to take care of these effects. This weekend we were at the G7 ministerial meeting. We considered actions to be taken together with the World Food Organization, and we are working towards mitigating the effects of Russia and secure food supply to all countries, but this will be a big endeavor, a big challenge for the world community, and will require a strong engagement from the G20 members. I hope that in the next weeks, at the meeting called by the US in Washington and the meetings of the G20, the issue of food security at the meetings of the African Union, the issue of food security and energy prices will be very much in the agenda because the world needs it. Well, we also talk about other issues, but these are the most important concrete subjects of discussion. We talk about Western Balkans, we talk about Ukraine from all points of view. That's it.
And what we don't talk about now, you will be asked by the media for sure, so we will take questions from you.
Yes, they always talk about the things that we didn't talk.
Exactly. So first we start in the press room and then we also go to colleagues connected online. Please use the microphone in the middle so Victor, you can go over. Yes, please. Mm-hmm.
My name is Dmitry Shkurko, National News Agency of Ukraine. So far, countries in Balkans have in a long time waiting for accession. But still there are some problems with the accession to EU, and still EU is not able to start the accession negotiations. How that related to the aspiration of Ukraine to join EU, if there is some kind of ties between that? And the second question, if I may. European Union often say that it demands from Russia unconditionally stop a war in Ukraine and to withdraw all the forces out of Ukraine. But right now, Russian invaders, they just declare some part of occupied territories as Russian territory and raising flags and trying to form the local administration. So in that regard, how that could impact the ceasefire, if that ceasefire is visible? Thank you.
Well, there is no link, there is no relationship between the adhesion process of the Western Balkans that has been lasting for quite a number of years and the request for membership or for candidacy for candidacy of Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova. The Commission is studying these 3 requests and will present soon, very quickly, by our standards, very quickly, we will soon present to the Council an opinion. I'm saying very quickly because this kind of procedures takes years. And the first 2 steps, to present the questionnaire, to answer the questionnaire, and to study to produce the opinion of the Commission, in the case of Ukraine, has been performing at the speed of light compared with other processes. But both Western Balkans and others are based on rules, meritocratic. There are conditions to be fulfilled. We want to do it as quick as possible, and we have to wait for the Commission to present an opinion, which I cannot advance. And there is no link between the Western Balkan accession and the Ukrainian request. Second, we will not recognize a single square kilometers of Ukrainian land taken by the Russians, as we didn't recognize Crimea. We will not recognize any part of Ukraine being claimed as part of the Russian Federation. We defend the territorial integrity of Ukraine. And when we say that we hope Ukraine will win this war, means that they will be able to reject the invader out of their borders.
Next question, Tanya Milevska. Tanya, your microphone should be open any second.
Hi. Tanya Milevska from MIA, the Agency of North Macedonia. I would like to know if you discussed any compensation measures, financial, economic, for the Western Balkans. I believe that there is a request by North Macedonia for macro-financial assistance to cope with the consequences of the war and of the sanctions, knowing that North Macedonia is one of the few who is 100% aligned with the sanctions. Do you consider integrating these countries who are 100% aligned with the sanctions to the EU programs of compensation, and do you consider giving North Macedonia macro-financial assistance, and how big would it be? And also on Bulgaria, I believe that the Macedonian minister had the opportunity to talk to his Bulgarian colleague. Tell us if there is any change of position on the Bulgarian side.
I understand the question. Thank you. About the first issue, to tell the truth, we haven't gone deeper on this subject. We haven't gone deeper on the subject of that sanctions are going to cost me, so please compensate me for the cost of the implementing sanctions. We know that North Macedonia and other countries in the Balkans will need macro-financial assistance. We are going to incorporate all of them in any plan recovery, in any decision that we could take in order to face the increase in electricity, energy, food. We will incorporate the Western Balkans on our answer to the crisis. But to tell the truth, we haven't gone to any specific issue on compensation or macro-financial assistance due to the sanctions. By the contrary, yes, we have gone, as you can imagine, very deeply on the issue of the relationship between Bulgaria and North Macedonia that is blocking the process. We went during the launch in our dialogue between the Western Balkans and the member states, and we went during our debate among the member states alone. And certainly this is something that has to be overcome. And there is the strong will and a strong political commitment from the Council to push in order to avoid the crisis that could come if, before the end of the French presidency, this is not being solved. I am putting a limit of time. If it doesn't happen during the French presidency, I have to recognize that we will be in a strong crisis in our relationship with the Western Balkan countries. So we will do our best. We will continue to put all the pressure in order for both parts to reach an agreement.
Thank you. Next question over in the back. Yes. Yeah, you can come. Yeah, you can come to the microphone.
Thank you, High Rep. Jacopo Bregazzi from Politico. I have a couple of questions. One is that Orban said in a public interview that he's against the inclusion of Patriarch Kirill in the sanctions list. Since the listings have been prepared by the External Service, I was wondering whether you would be in favor of taking out that name of the Patriarch in case this could speed up an agreement with Hungary over the oil sanctions. And secondly, sorry if I may, but
that made me laugh.
I know, but I hope so. It's if you can, if you have a sense after today's discussion on, because you said now we'll go back to Coreper, whether the agreement will be reached in days or weeks. I mean, the ministers, they've all been saying that they think that at the end Hungary will agree. But do you have a sense of timing, if it's a matter of days, weeks, or longer? Thank you.
Well, about the Patriarch and the oil. We're not talking about holy oil, no? We're talking about oil. Well, then there is no link. I don't see the link, frankly speaking. And I even cannot imagine that no one has been thinking on this link. No? And about how long can it take? Well, today the discussion has clarified some issues about the difficulties that Hungary is facing. These difficulties can be measured on time in order to adapt, or in cost in terms of how costly is the adaptation. The adaptation has two dimensions, which have been explained by the Hungarian minister. One is the refinery structure and the oil capacity of the pipeline. This is a cost once and for all, a single shot, to change the technological structure of the refinery, and you prolong the pipeline coming from the Mediterranean through Croatia. And then there is a structural cost, a permanent structural cost related with the different prices of the Russian oil and other oils, which are more expensive. Certainly, this is an issue to be taken into consideration, but it's not just a matter of time, it's a matter of cost. We have been discussing that objectively in a very positive manner to try to understand the dimension of the cost, try to understand if it is a matter of time, it's a matter of cost. But at the end, we decided to send it back to the Coreper because it was technically too complicated and it was not possible to reach a political decision today. I hope it's not going to be last more, but I cannot tell you if it's going to take 1 week or two.
Thank you. And we take one last question from the Zoom colleagues who are connected. So Lawrence was the next one who was raising his hand. Lawrence Norman. Lawrence, your microphone is open.
Thank you very much, and thanks, Rep. I'm going to base it a little bit off Jacobo's question just now. Just to be a bit clearer, Hungary's foreign minister today said the cost that would need to be covered is 15 to 18 billion euros. Viktor Orban blamed European sanctions for raising inflation and for what he said would be years of decline and stagnation. As Jacobo said, there was an assumption that Hungary would eventually come on board. I'm wondering if people are beginning to question whether Hungary has any interest in signing up to this oil embargo. Thanks, Harry.
Hungary has not explained their position on political terms, but in economic terms. Not about their relationship with Russia and the need to keep the oil embargo as an objective, but on economic terms. These figures that you mentioned, well, I heard other figures, but maybe there is a misunderstanding because it was a conversation that required more technical, concrete, and by written procedure process, because you know the figures. Yes, the figures are quite high, but the discussion has been on technical terms about the cost and the time required for the adaptation. Nothing about this cataclysm that you are announcing. But, you know, sanctions cost. Yes, certainly, sanctions cost. It's not something that you discover today. Sanctions hurt the one who is being sanctioned and has collateral effects on the one who sanctions. And certainly, everybody tries to look which is the balance, which is the damage that you create to the one who sanctions, and which is the damage that you suffer as a consequence of the sanction. We can say the same thing about gas. It also has consequences. So the discussion will continue, but one thing is clear, I think it's clear for everybody in the Council, we have to get rid of the energy dependency of the European Union with respect to oil, gas and coal coming from Russia. And this is something that will have to be done progressively, as quick as possible, but it has to be done. We have to get rid of this strong dependency that makes us very vulnerable. And the discussion will continue in order to know how and when and at which cost will every member state have to bear. But today it was not possible to reach an agreement. By the way, it was not even in the agenda to try to get an agreement today because we knew that it was not possible. But we had a very constructive discussion about the reasons of why some member states are reluctant, not only about oil ban, but other elements of the sanctions package.
Jaime, do you still believe there will be a deal or not?
Why not?
That doesn't sound very confident.
This is a psychological interview or what?
No, it's an interview on a very important question.
Yes,
everyone, as Jacobo said, everyone was saying it would happen. It still hasn't happened, and today doesn't sound any better than the previous discussions.
As I said, it was not even in the agenda today to get an agreement because everybody knew that the issue was not mature. But we have, and I wanted to have an exchange of views between all ministers engaged in order to better understand which are the constraints, which are the causes, which are the reluctances, which are the difficulties. And the difficulties that were expressed today were strictly technical and economical.
Thank you very much. That's it for today, but there will be another opportunity because High Representative will be here tomorrow on another FAC defense. So thank you very much for coming and bearing with us.
Allow me to say one thing, Peter. I understand that you want to know what's happening, when it's going to happen, at which cost, which are the position of each one, what's happening with the patriarch, what's happening with a friend of each. There are some deeper approach to what's happening. We are facing three tests. The European Union is facing three tests. We are facing the test of war, we are facing the test of resilience, and we are facing the test of legitimacy. The three of them are important because war was absent from our imagination, and now we are facing a war. And now we are sending arms to someone who is fighting, someone who is dying, someone who is suffering a barbarian attack and is fighting a lot with a lot of casualties, I suppose. I don't have figures, but you only have to look at the TV screens, and you will see this column of Russian tanks destroyed trying to cross a river. We are facing a war, an awful war, a full-scale war. And we are mobilizing our resources. We are facing a resilience problem. We have to face a lot of things. We have to face our energy dependency on Russia. We talk about 40% of our gas supply. We are talking about 25% of our oil supply. This is something structurally important. We have to change a lot of things to adapt to this new situation. And third thing, we are facing the test of legitimacy. It's our approach accepted by the world community. when we say that we are defending international law, the sovereignty of the nations, when we say that we are defending a country being invaded by an aggressor, is the world community understanding this message? Are there member states of the United Nations behind our discourse? This is going to be an intellectual fight. And this is going to last. The war is going to last. And the war ideas is going to last also. So I understand that you want to know what's going to happen with the Hungarian oil and the Kirill Patriarch. But pay attention to the structural change that we are facing. Because the world will be completely different after this war. Completely different. The relationships of forces, the geopolitical balances, the equilibriums, the alliances, the geopolitical of energy. The geopolitical of energy will change dramatically with this war. We are going to approve in the Commission on Wednesday a package in order to face that. These things cannot happen overnight. These are structural. So I understand you want to know when and who, but please pay attention to the underlying process. It's one of the most important dynamics that we are facing. And 1 year ago, no, not 1 year ago, 6 months ago, in January, when I went to Ukraine for the first time, to the borderline, we couldn't imagine that we were in such a situation. Now we are. And we had to win these three tests: the test of war, the test of resilience, and the test of international legitimacy.
Thank you. And with this we conclude. So see you tomorrow. Have a nice evening. Thank you, everyone. Bye.